Profitable Practices. Farm solutions for people, profit, and the planet on Real Agriculture is brought to you by Farm Credit Canada and RBC Royal Bank.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to Real Agriculture. Today I'm down at Port Rowan, Ontario, catching up with cash crop farmer Dan Petker. Today we're going to dig into strip till. That's the process of minimizing tillage by cultivating 8-inch wide strips of soil and planting directly into those strips. How does that practice impact the profitability and the sustainability of this farm? Here's my interview with Dan Petker. Hey Dan, give us a snapshot of the operation. Tell us about the farm.
Well, we farm here in Norfolk County with my dad and Drew. Usually when people think of Norfolk County, they think blow sand, tobacco, and Stompin' Tom. We are just below that sand plain, right against the shores of Lake Erie, and that means we need to manage things a little bit differently for erosion because we are the last stop before everything dumps into the lake. So we have taken on a few different ways of managing the soil here.
So Dan, tell us about what's in the rotation. What are you growing?
Our rotation is pretty standard, just like a lot of Ontario. Wheat with red clover, soybeans and corn. We have a little bit of hay here and there on some erodible ground, so we can have perennials there for 4 or 5 years.
So how does tillage impact the sustainability and the profitability of your farm?
There's two ways to look at that question, or at the answer of this. Parts of our farm have lack of tillage, so we have lack of expense. So we no-till our corn, no-till our wheat, no-till our alfalfa. Where we do apply tillage is typically in strip till situations for the corn to best maximize our corn potential yield. And corn doesn't seem to like no-till soil or being no-tilled around here. So tillage has allowed us to balance the erosion control that we need and maximizing the profitability or production of that corn crop.
Now, Dan, tell me about why you adopted strip till. What's the strategy? What were you hoping to achieve?
Initially, it was for better time management of our overall operation. So typically, I would need somebody to go spread fertilizer, then we'd have to work that in, and then we come plant, and that I just didn't have enough labor. So we condensed two of the operations of tillage and fertilizer broadcast into one. So now I have one guy who's always here. But with that comes the efficiencies of fertilizer placement, and we haven't actually reduced a lot of our rates, where some guys will say, well, they have, but we are producing such strong yields that we need loss of fertility there just to maintain levels of the soil. Typically, we always do spring strips. Our soils are always typically too wet in the fall. This past fall, we had an opportunity to try some fall strips, but it also helped us because the one nutrient we still broadcast is potash. And with the price of potash the past year was prohibitive to broadcast it. So we condensed our rate and put it down in strips. So instead of broadcasting an average of 300 pounds of product, now we stripped in 150 to 200 pounds last fall. And we'll see how that works. That's our first time really tackling that one. One of the nice parts about strip tilling soils is that we still have a solid piece of unworked dirt. And that holds in my worked in strips. So what happens when we get pounding rains or big blowing winds, our strips stay in place and so does our soil, which means so does my fertilizer product. So one, we are being environmentally sustainable as well as we can and economically sustainable with what we can.
So tell us about your strip till program here on the farm, the how, when, and where.
Sure. So our first kind of tackle of a strip till was we borrowed somebody's shank machine with a sunflower, and we found that we were working up too much clay. So we shifted to a coulter system. I know there's 2 other units of these in Ontario. It's a Great Plains NutriPro. So it's all coulters, and what we have found is the best management or balance of our clay, silt, and sandy soils. We're not bringing up gobs. And basically we make an 8-inch strip. Drew or whoever's running the tractor at the time will typically open the field just like any other place, hour, maybe 4 hours ahead of time, and apply all of our dry product with it. And just depending on the weather, the timing of when the planter comes and chases, it may be always 2 rounds behind or a whole day behind, just being on how soil has dried out and been prepared.
So Dan, how do you measure success when it comes to strip till? You know, what are you seeing on this farm economically, you know, sustainability?
Right. The first two metrics typically of how I determine that the success of this system come harvest, we'll start at harvest, let's say that. We no longer make ruts. Our ground kind of stability has changed. It probably took 3 years of no-till corn or no-till beans and then strip-till corn before it really solidified. And now, like, right there is a win. I see much less gully erosion and rill erosion from the major thaw events. Right there is a huge win for us, and that is a success. And we are raising more corn per acre than we have. And that is some varietal thing, but it's typically this approach. For the first 3 years that we were doing strip till, we would do comparative fields, so what we used to do versus what we do now, just to see how much of it was variety and how much of it is actually management. And management probably accounted for 75 to 80% of that yield gain. Right there is the success, and now it's just by rote. So I've stopped measuring comparatives against old ways of doing things. This really works for us, and now we roll.
Final point, Dan, let's talk about profitability. What has strip till done for this farm, you know, from a dollars and cents perspective and for the future?
The dollars per cents part would be we have eliminated the need for our broadcast spreader and an additional tractor. We've also eliminated, for better or for worse, one more labor element. So we are probably dollar to dollar 30% ahead by moving to the strip till system. So right there, our profitability or our margin has changed, because now if you're going to spend the money, you can spend it elsewhere, or you just don't and you keep it and go on a trip. The other wonderful thing is our soils are now staying where they are, way better than they ever have. They're not kind of eroding into the creek as they did when I was a kid. They're not blowing up into the air, and this soil will be here and sustainable for whoever wants it after we're done.